Welcome to the Trailer Island podcast, where we compare films and their trailers. Did the film deliver what the trailer promised? I am your host, Alex, and I'm joined by...
I'm stuck on an island. I'm Steve.
And
I'm Matthew. That's who I am.
I think Steve's actually starting to mentally degrade.
Yeah, it's the heat stroke.
as it goes on.
Oh, it's sand.
I've definitely felt every second stuck on this island with Steve, so, we're getting through it.
I do love how you're dressed in seaweed today. I think it's a wonderful new look.
I call this a net.
Okay, fantastic.
It's a makeshift net, but it's pretty warm.
Am I in the wrong podcast? Is this a fashion podcast now? What's happening?
Well, Matthew, those shells, they are working hard, but they look fantastic.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's good. We're really going back this week.
We're going back further than we've ever been before.
And I think it's important that, because we are going so far back, in fact, 1954, that our tugboat, the Time Tug, it's got a lot of work to do today to get us all the way back to 1954. Should I bring it out?
Please bring that.
Yeah, okay. Hang on, bring it in. Oh, there it is.
The ocean is my girlfriend, and she keeps on cheating on me. Cigarettes.
That captain needs some help, I think.
Seems fine to me.
So thank you, Time Tug. You've travelled us all the way back to... Hang on, actually, I've got another sound effect that might work for that. For also travelling back in time.
Oh, God.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a valid sound effect to use. Matthew, you are not impressed with that, are you?
I think let's just introduce the film.
So we are going back all the way back to 1954 with a Alfred Hitchcock film. Mm-hmm. We'll be back in a couple of minutes because it goes quite a while, but it's worth having a listen to how we are described a lot about the film in this trailer.
Oh, just how different trailers are in general back then?
This week, we are doing Alfred,
yes, correct.
Hitchcock's 1954 Rear Window.
This is the scene of the crime. A crime of passion, filmed in a way you have never seen before, and as no one else would dare attempt. But the screen's master of suspense, the producer-director who shocked the world with Psycho. This is the apartment of a man named Jeffries, a news photographer whose beat used to be the world. Right now, his world has shrunk down to the size of this window. He's been watching the people across the way. Nobody seems to pull their blinds during a hot spell like this. He knows a lot about them by now. Too much, perhaps. For instance, down there on the second floor, the woman pacing about. He calls her Miss Lonely Hearts, so lonely that even death seems like a friend. These are the newlyweds, on a honeymoon no one will ever forget. He calls her Miss Hearing Aid, an artist of a very odd and strange art. The songwriter, who plays the same melody over and over again. A genius or insane? This is the traveling salesman and his invalid wife. Out of their arguments and nagging comes a weird kind of love. Miss Torso, the body beautiful. That is, viewed from a safe distance.
Those are just a few of my neighbors. First I watched them just to kill time, but then I couldn't take my eyes off them, just as you won't be able to.
And you won't be able to take your eyes off the glowing beauty of Grace Kelly, who shares the heart and curiosity of James Stewart in this story of a romance shadowed by the terror of a horrifying secret.
Well, there we go. That is... you can tell the era that has been produced in. That is just by the sound quality, if anything. But also the narration. I think, narration is something we haven't really had in trailers for quite some time, really.
Probably naughty.
Yeah, probably the last time.
Of the films that we've done, the last time I heard narration was in Lemony Snicket.
Yeah, which was, what was that? That was 04, I think, wasn't it?
04, yeah.
Starring Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey.
But this trailer, interestingly enough for this film, the original trailer does not exist. They've lost it somehow into the archive.
I was so disappointed when you said that earlier.
Yeah, but the trick, obviously, is that they mention Psycho in that trailer. Like, if you could stand Psycho, come and see this if you dare, kind of thing. But Psycho came out 6 years after this film. So this was obviously them trying to tie it up to a re-release to sort of come along with that popularity of Psycho. It's an interesting trailer because it really does. It tells you a lot, doesn't it?
Oh yeah.
If you haven't seen Rear Window yet, go see it.
Yeah.
But this may be difficult to discuss.
Well, to be fair, this film is now 76 years old. I feel like spoilers are a bit of a
You can be careful about giving probably the final thing away because it won't impact our discussion.
at the
say about
end. What
this-
happens is
What I would say about this, though, is because Alfred Hitchcock is such a master that, I mean, in the trailer they say this is the scene of the crime. We know there's a crime.
Yes.
Okay. But the real, suspenseful elements of this film are about how our main characters are going to expose the crime.
yeah, exactly.
It's not exactly that the crime's been committed. It's just how are our characters going to navigate this.
To me, it's like a lot of Hitchcock's work. It is a bit like Cluedo, similar to like Rope as well. But like the thing, like you start the game with Cluedo and you know that someone has died,
Yeah.
and it's about finding out how it happened. But interestingly, in this trailer, it makes a big deal of it being an Alfred Hitchcock film, and I think Alfred Hitchcock really was the first director to have this kind of to bring about this culture of directors' names being associated with films. You know, you sort of apply that to the modern day, and you have your Steven Spielbergs, your Ridley Scott. But really, before Alfred Hitchcock, the director wasn't the biggest name attached to a film. It was always the actors.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Yeah.
There are names like John Huston, always sort of some of those big Western directors in particular.
Sure. But are they
really
famous now? Were they famous at the time like Hitchcock was? Or is
I
that
would
because
say,
of more of a
absolutely.
retroactive thing?
I would say absolutely yes. Some of John Huston's epic films are still remembered today as one like tent poles, some hallmarks.
But that's my point. Is they remember today in that lens, but back then when they were released, were they saying this is a film?
yeah, absolutely,
by
yeah.
this person? Okay.
Were they pre or post Hitchcock?
Houston was probably around the same time as.
So perhaps it was a marketing thing that people began to realise that is a way of selling a film.
Sure.
And it became more of a marketing exercise, but I don't think Hitchcock was particularly coy to the use of his image in promoting
not,
his
yeah.
film. So I think he encouraged it, in fact.
He definitely. I would imagine the man had something of an ego. I would imagine. It became a sort of genre of itself, didn't it? Going to see a Hitchcock film.
You can use that as a example of a film. So it's a very Hitchcock film.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
But if you were to ask someone to describe or tell us, name a director from before the 1970s, Hitchcock is probably one of the people you would be able to name at a good guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wonder if it was a marketing ploy at the time in 1954 that it was advertised as a Hitchcock film.
Oh, I think it was. I think it definitely was.
Because by that point, Rope had been released in 1948.
Yes.
I mean, his first film was in 1922.
He's had a very sorry, I should use past tense, but he had a very, very long career.
He produced, I think, over 50 films.
Yeah.
And then went and remade some of his own films as well.
He did for an American audience.
Yeah.
Did he really?
He did. Because he started off his career in the UK.
Right.
So he made, I think, like Stranger Than Train over there, and then remade that over there.
I think.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
I've definitely only ever seen the American Strangers on a Train, but that's probably one of my favorite Hitchcock films. But
there are definitely a couple he's gone back and he's remade.
The difficult thing with I don't know, we're slightly off topic, but the difficult thing with Hitchcock is because a lot of his earlier films are so old, they basically don't exist anymore, so you can't find them. It's only his later, more well-known stuff that's been preserved. But bringing that back to Rear Window, this film itself went missing for about 30 years after Hitchcock died, because in his will, he had left this film and a number of others, including Rope, to his daughter. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, she didn't want them in circulation. So it wasn't until I think it was in the 80s, she finally said, you can have them back now. And that's when they re-released Rope and Rear Window in the 1980s.
Would you guess that this trailer we just listened to was probably coinciding with that?
I think this trailer, by the sounds of it, is much older than the 1980s, I think.
How wonderful is that trailer, though? It's just...
It's beautiful.
Someone wrote down the plot to the film on a piece of paper, gave it to the voiceover guy. I was like, just read this, it's literal. It's very literal.
Jimmy Stewart records a bit to camera as well, specifically for the trailer.
He's using that star power as well of Jimmy Stewart, who at this stage is very well known.
One of the most bankable stars at that stage, I'd say.
Yeah, Grace Kelly had done a lot of TV leading up to this point.
Yeah,
and was
sure.
probably quite well known in that regard. And
Well, Hitchcock definitely liked her.
I think this was her and Hitchcock's first film together.
I believe so.
It was one of three, but maybe we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
When we should probably discuss what is this film? What
Yes.
is Rear Window? What happens in Rear Window? We've got Jimmy Stewart, who is our main character.
L.B. Jeffries.
L.B. Jeffries, and
L.B. Jeffries has broken his, I want to say, leg and hip.
because that cast is quite high up,
It's
isn't
quite
it?
hard, yeah.
So
He's wheelchair bound for 8 weeks.
and stuck in his apartment in the middle of an American heat wave. You could probably say it's downtown Manhattan.
I think it is.
Yeah.
Something like that. Doesn't have anywhere to go, and all he can really do is watch his neighbors.
Because it's a square. It's a square that encircles him entirely. So he has this wonderful view into his neighbours' windows and everything.
And into their lives as well.
Yeah, indeed.
And which is quite well described in the trailer. And what we learn quite quickly about our character, which is the classic Hitchcock of show and don't tell, is that almost immediately in the first minute we know it's extremely hot. We can see people hot and bothered from his window. Pans down across him. It shows his broken leg. It even has his name. Here lays the broken leg of
L.B. Jeffries.
L.B. Jeffries. And then you think, oh, well, we're going to find out how that happened at some point. And immediately it pans to, all in one shot,
Photos.
Yeah.
to, I think it's a broken camera,
Yeah.
first of all. Okay, so he's a photographer and something's happened while he's taking photos. And sure enough, it goes to the first photo and it's this, looks like a car race with
Yeah.
a car crash heading straight towards him.
I mean,
so
we can only insinuate that that's the way he broke his...
that's correct, but
It'd be strange if that wasn't the way. Because
Yeah,
the film
exactly,
is
yeah.
quite deliberate.
it's quite deliberate about showing you this is what happened. But there's a conversation later that he has with his boss over the phone that, I've risked life and limb for you and my job. You need to get me out of this insanity that I am stuck in this room. So there's this beautiful way of how Hitchcock does this. I don't need to tell you to camera what's happening, which is, funnily enough, exactly what happens in the trailer. They're like polar opposites as Hitchcock storytelling.
It's true.
Where the trailer goes, I am talking to you and this is what happens in this film, versus the film itself where it doesn't give you all this descriptive narrative to camera. It's literally just able to show you, and sometimes even conversations between characters, they just look at each other and you know what they're thinking about or
that's
talking
true.
about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was probably quite rare in films those days. I feel like a lot of it was expositional for a large amount.
Well, particularly with the invent of the microphone.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I think was a real challenge for filmmakers with, like, we've got this wonderful thing that we can tell our audience, because we've come from a world of showing cue cards.
Yeah, exactly.
About conversation, and we're cutting to, we can finally use microphones. But our character, Jeffries, he's stuck in his room. We never leave the room as an audience till the very end.
No,
Oh, that's true. I never picked up on that. There you go.
There are a few moments, because there are a few shots where the angle is just impossible to get, so they kind of cheat it at one or two times. But for all intents and purposes, the camera is in that room with him the entire time.
See, this is, again, just one of those another movie that I usually sit down and watch like every year. And every year I pick up something new. And so this year when I watched it for the podcast, I noticed that, like, the first shot's the film. The first shot is this giant one shot. Yeah. And it's a bit wider, going around the whole, like, inner circle of these buildings. The second shot is another one shot, just as long, and this time it's focusing in on all the windows as well. I never knew that. That never clicked with me. But I appreciate it so much.
Well, it just goes to show how much there is to analyse in this film, and particularly why it's prescribed to people in film school to, really dig deep into it. Now, our character Jeffries, as we discussed, he's stuck in this room. Well, he has a partner, not a spouse at this point, but the wonderful Grace Kelly, who is in love with him. There's a bit of tension where he doesn't want to get married.
He's a bit of an adventurer, and she's very much the opposite of that lifestyle.
She's a socialite, quite well established in the New York fashion scene, I suspect, and wants him to calm down, become a man of the house, and he's an adventurer who likes to go out and take photos. And one night, while he's alone and watching his neighbours, what does he do? He believes...
He suspects
he suspects he's witnessed a murder.
Yeah.
And he has had a few clues leading up to it. He's seen seen these couple bickering, perhaps.
Couple across the
square are bickering, and
which, quite funnily, the film describes as the wife nags the husband quite a lot, and then there's a conversation about where Jeffries is talking about, well, you know, it's a modern time now. She doesn't nag, they discuss. Oh, God. And so one night he doesn't see, but he hears a scream.
That's right.
Yet more just a genius titillation by Hitchcock there.
And
but we never ever see anything happen. We just
he's never
it's always inferred.
Across all his films, I think, with maybe the exception of, I think one of them, I forget what it's called, where it's set in London towards the end of his career. But no, he's always been very good at, you either hear it or it's inferred, but you never ever see anything.
Or it's like rope and it's like the first scene.
Yeah, exactly. I love that.
It's very, like, he insinuates a lot and lets you decide, which I suppose adds to the mystery of a situation.
What it adds to the fear, that's why he's the master of suspense, is your imagination can run wild. What I love about this film is when they're just discussing, he's absolutely adamant that this murder's taking place and that this person's having to, ship body parts of his wife out of the apartment, and the nurse, the healthcare professional who's looking after him from the insurance company, so going, well, how would he do it? And they just kind of throw little things, maybe he's doing it like this, and they don't go too far into it. I mean, the film's not too in your face, but it makes you go, but what if he's like carrying a leg in that suitcase or something?
It's quite
grisly.
I was thinking about it's quite a heavy theme for 1954, talking about dismembering a body and disposing of body parts. Mm-hmm. And there's a scene where we see through the eyes of the binoculars and then later his telephoto lens of his camera. So him holding the camera becomes your eye.
Yeah.
You see the husband of the suspected murder victim cleaning a knife and a blade. Yeah, all these little things that make it, well, of course it's him.
Yeah.
But then you bring in the detective character who tries to bring logic to the conversation. Yeah. It's like, well, how many knives have you owned over your years? And so it's sort of building this doubt in the audience and in the character's mind.
And there are a few red herrings as well, a few sort of facts that aren't actually facts that make you think, oh, okay, well, it can't be that. But then obviously things later on you come back to and go, oh, wait, no, that was something else that we thought was this. And it's quite good at making you go, well, he's definitely guilty. And then going, oh, okay, well, no, it can't be him. And then later on going, oh, wait, no, I was right. And it sort of throws you around a little bit in that.
Just something as simple as the scene where he's still asleep in L.B. Jeffries is asleep in his chair, and they pan from very, very, he's definitely asleep. They pan over to the murderer's window, and you can see him leave the apartment with a woman.
Yes.
You're not told who the woman is, and you've instantly got seeds in your mind going, hang on, is that actually the wife? Is the wife actually left the building? Do we know this?
Jeffries, having not seen it, you go, well, now, of course, he's going to continue going on, but maybe he is wrong. Mm-hmm. It's quite cleverly done.
Because he misses that, doesn't he?
He does. He doesn't see that. Yeah.
It's a fantastic example of that show and don't tell. There's actually a great video, if you can find it online, where Hitchcock's doing, I guess, a masterclass of some sort, and he's discussing the concept of showing the audience what a character is looking at. Mm-hmm. And there's this great one of this man looking at some children playing in a playground, and it cuts back to the man and he shows a wry smile. And you say, okay, what is the emotion that you're evoking from this? This is a man who cares about children. Maybe he loves family. And you get a sense of the emotion of the scene. And then he says, okay, well, let's get the exact same shot of the man looking, and let's put a woman in a bikini doing exercise. And you cut back to him. He has the exact same reaction, but he has this wry smile.
Yeah.
And you think, well, he's a perv. Look at him staring at this woman who's just trying to exercise.
My favorite part of that is the person he's using as an example there is always him making the smile as well.
Yeah, I'd forgotten that. Yeah, it's him. It's been a while since I've been in film school. So there you go. So it really shows the power of that show don't tell. What can you as a filmmaker
Hitchcock really championed the idea of a film being a montage. It's not a theatre production. This is a montage of images you can put together to sort of tell any story you want, really. You can rearrange them as much as you like and sort of change perspective on things. I think that's probably why he's so well respected in hindsight, is he really especially in Psycho, it's quite sort of well known that the studio was quite appalled with how violent that film appears to be. But if you watch the shower scene, there's actually really very little blood in that. And it's all down to the way he's cut it.
Yeah.
And the sound effects and everything.
There's that classic shot in Psycho as well. I think everyone's seen the shower scene.
Surely.
Where I think there's only one shot where you physically see a knife pressed up against skin.
Yeah, and it's very quick.
Which is also a shot in reverse. So if you look at it, the knife is pressed against the skin. How they've filmed it is they've done that and then pulled the knife away.
Yeah, right.
But for the purpose of the film, they've reversed it and show the sort of the process. But you never see a knife pierce skin. You see plenty of blood, but it's also in black and... Is it in black and white?
Yeah, Psycho's black and white, yeah.
Which obviously must have been by choice because Rear Window's in colour.
I think he definitely did it deliberately. I can't remember off the top of my head now why he did, but he definitely... I mean, all the films he'd made previous to that for the last 10 films had been in colour.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting choice.
I do agree that the montage is the champion of Rear Window, but rewatching it today, I was just reminded about how good the character story within this film is. Like the conflict within L.B. Jeffries as to whether he wants to marry Lisa or whether he wants to cut his losses and go back out on the road. And for him, there's no compromise there.
Yeah, he's very one or the other, isn't he?
Yeah. He's actually, like, Jimmy Stewart is known as the nice guy of Hollywood, and he is a genuine a-hole in this.
Yeah, he's a bit of a dick, isn't he?
Tells Grace Kelly to shut up twice.
It's like, who would say no to Grace Kelly? Like, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it just shows how well you believe his character and how well that's told.
It's, the two roles I can think of where he's probably playing someone who's maybe not the nice guy would be this, and then obviously Vertigo.
Still highlight those two characters, that dynamic going on. Still highlight from this film.
It is very believable.
Yeah.
The relationship between the two of them.
All of the characters within the apartment. So his healthcare professional, Stella, thank you, and his detective mate, Doyle. They're both also great characters who come in. They give you they sort of throw on a bit more bit of comedy here and there, but they also do progress the plot quite nicely, and the suspense really, because they very slowly kind of come around to his idea. They're very much like, no, you're ridiculous. This is not happening. And then they very slowly come around to it, and they start saying things like, "Oh no, you're right, actually." And then he could have done this, and they sort of start fueling him. You know,
it's wonderful how that change happens, isn't it? Where they these extra characters are then convinced that something is going on. You see this turn of, no, that can't possibly be true. And then
they're not English.
Well, no, okay. That's my 1954. Everyone talks like that in 1954.
Right, okay.
And then they all start theorizing how the murder or people being chopped up could have happened.
Yeah.
It's quite good.
That's where Stella coming in every time is just that's her best performance. Is she's like describing these really gruesome details to Grace Kelly, and Grace is like, "Stella, don't be so crass," and she's like, "Well, how else am I supposed to describe a murder?"
Yeah.
She does have some very good moments, actually. She's a
lovely, witty bits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was really surprised watching this, and I've seen this, like all of us, I think here many, many times, but I probably haven't watched this for about 2 years, maybe 2.5 years. And I was sitting at home watching this, and especially the last half hour, I honestly felt myself leaning forward. Like the suspense, this film is 76 years old, but the suspense still works. And not to give anything away, I think we've agreed that we don't want to ruin it if you haven't seen it, but things pretty dramatic happen at the end of this movie. And you sort of start screaming and going, "Oh, no, don't do that." You know, that kind of thing. It's amazing that this film still works so many years later. It's incredible.
Just creating a world that feels really lived in as well is something I've always been astounded about Rear Window in particular, and just how expertly it's crafted that it does feel like a real world with all these individual stories going on.
And he does. He does it very well. Unfortunately, this film did not win for Best Set Decoration.
It should have, yeah.
It should have.
So this wonderful set.
This was shot, so this was made on the Paramount stages, and they actually had to remove the floor of the stage because they needed more height, so it's actually the basement that you're looking at in that film. But it is like you think about the amount of lights they would have had to have had in there, because it looks like daylight. They've lit it really well, and then they have torrential downpours as well. You believe the set. And also I think the most effective thing in that set is the little alleyway he can see out of into the street beyond. You've got a little pub there. You can just see the corner of it, and you've got people and vehicles going past. And that just sells the image immediately.
There's a world beyond what we're living in.
Exactly. It's really well done.
Like Miss Lonely Heart's like dressing up to go out, walks down this alleyway across the street. She's waiting for someone. That someone never, ever turns up. So she just goes into the restaurant. And you can see this all on camera, like all within focal focus as well. And it looks... the lived-in part of this world. It made me think of a Where's Wally book.
Okay,
trying to spot things.
Oh yeah,
which is, I guess, what our main character is doing. He's looking for clues the entire time.
He found Wally,
and talking about that lived-in world is the soundtrack for this is The Neighborhood.
Yeah, it's all diegetic, other than the titles at the beginning.
Yeah, one of his neighbors is a struggling musician, a composer of sorts, and it's his music that he plays as the noisy neighbor that scores this film. And you get those motifs that are repeated because this character, which is described in conversation, is stuck with this idea in his head about this song that he's trying to write, which is the running theme and score that we get throughout the film.
That music directly influences a number of characters in the film. It's not just there as a kind of, this is a neighbor, he's a musician thing. It actually has a plot purpose.
Yeah.
There's not much wasted in this film, I think.
There's also, like, you in scenes of particular tension, or when they're, reiterating the sense of heat and stress and tension, is that the screaming brakes of a nearby train can be heard.
Yeah,
rumbling through the neighborhood, and that sort of that grinding noise.
I think the best one is actually the party as well. Like, there's that constant din in the background during the scene, and you get to the point it's like, that's actually starting to get really annoying, but it like fuels the scene and fuels how you're feeling in that scene. It's like, can they just shut up? Which
is an interesting juxtaposition to tension in the film at the time. Like, there's this wonderful party going on.
Exactly, yeah.
And there's people in a lot of trouble across the way.
One of my favourite little bits of trivia about this film is Alfred Hitchcock allegedly directed this film without ever going into any of the other rooms in the film other than the one that Jimmy Stewart is in. And so he communicated with all the other actors via earpieces. There's a heat wave, so some of the neighbours are sleeping outside on the balcony. They have this mattress. Anyway, it starts raining, and so they have to get the mattress inside quick. And Alfred Hitchcock allegedly spoke to them individually over these earpieces and said, I want you to go in that window, and then told the other one to go in the other window. And so they have this like to and froing kind of thing, and it's that kind of little moments of comedy and genius like that just get this really natural kind of wonderful performance
reaction between characters.
Yeah, it's great.
So Jimmy Stewart and Hitchcock made 4 films together.
Certainly did.
And Grace Kelly and Hitchcock made 3 films together. This is the only film that Jimmy Stewart and Grace Kelly are in together. And
Grace Kelly did say in a few interviews that she quite liked Jimmy Stewart. She had a reputation, obviously, but apparently she was quite taken with him.
Everybody loves Jimmy Stewart. I'm probably wrong.
It's an interesting one to talk about, because I suppose, in effect, we are kind of almost... It's a bit of a love letter to the film.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think that if we were to be hypercritical of it, it would be difficult. You could be like, the VFX in this are atrocious.
I think, that's the thing. This is up there with... My 3 favourite Hitchcock films are this, Rope, and then Strangers on a Train. Those 3 films are just... I can't fault them. Obviously, they are somewhat dated. They were made so many years ago. But beyond that, I can't see anything wrong with them. I just think they're a fantastic bit of filmmaking.
Oh, I do as well. Can we talk about Raymond Burr for a second?
Yes. This is the biggest thing he's ever done.
He did. Well, no.
He had a long career, but this is like what he's most well known for.
What I always find interesting, and I'm definitely not discrediting the character here, but... what's his name? Thorwald?
Thorwald, yeah.
He always ends up on a lot of like top 10 movie villain lists.
Okay.
And I've never really understood it.
Maybe it's that whole thing of a silent villain is more effective.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah. What I do love is... actually, no, I was about to go into spoiler territory there.
No, I think at this point it's okay. Be aware that if you haven't seen the film, that Matthew's going to ruin your day.
Maybe don't listen for like the next 30 seconds. But what I do love, here we go, when he does come into the room with Jimmy Stewart at the end, his voice and his manner is absolutely not what you... Obviously, until he starts having to go at him, is not what you expect. You go, this is a very scared man.
Yeah.
Even though by this point you are absolutely certain that he has murdered his wife. You kind of go, that's not what I was expecting. And I think they've deliberately cast quite a sort of heavy set man as well for that.
As a beast of a man.
He has an imposing figure, but he moves so slowly in it, and that's that sort of that reaching slow lurch.
Really starting to get uncomfortable because Jimmy Stewart, he tries to stand up, but he can't, and he can't get the wheels to go any further, and oh god, it's so stressful.
And
it's a bit disappointing. There's a moment there where he tries to get through a door, and like his foot just comes to rest on the door. And he's like, I can't get through that now.
Can't reach the door handle.
There's no way for me to possibly get through that door.
I mean, I guess it's a fight scene of sorts because there is an altercation, but it's so laborious, and that's the whole film as well. The film takes a really long time to tell a story. Like it has a deliberate slow pace to it. It
does. I think it's trying to make you feel like you're stuck in that wheelchair with him.
Yeah, I don't, and I think if it were any faster, it would be too quick. You wouldn't get that build.
Well, I think sadly, for that exact reason, you couldn't make this film now because the pacing would be faster, but I think you'd lose a kind of magic quality about it.
I was about to ask this of anyone: had they seen the Shia LaBeouf Disturbia film from probably 15 years ago?
No.
Because that's supposed to be like the loose remake of Rear Window, and it's supposed to be reasonably okay.
So what was that film called?
Disturbia. You couldn't make this film today.
It would be different though. It would be made to function differently.
Well, think about we talked about it before. I know this is a very different film, but Avengers Endgame really takes its time. Really takes its time to tell the story because they have so much to get through.
I'm not sure if Hitchcock has ever been a segue to the Avengers.
Well, look, this is a groundbreaking podcast. We travel through time.
Yeah, well, that's right.
That's about it.
A boat
on a time tug.
I definitely think you can still make these sort of suspenseful films these days. Whether you should go for a shot-for-shot remake of Rear Window is, I think, judging off of what Psycho did,
it's god-awful.
Probably a little bit ill-advised.
A modern style would be perfectly fine, but it's those core values of the filmmaking that need to be adhered to about the pacing and the timing and letting stuff breathe.
It needs to come across as an invitation to join his voyeurism. If it's too quick, you don't, because you eventually feel like, I'm also quite curious as to what these strangers are doing. But if it's too quick, I feel like you would skip over that and just go, why is he looking at these people? Maybe I do it on the bus. We all do. Like you sit on the bus, you're bored, and you start. If you're at the lights, you kind of look at the lights, going, oh, what's that person doing over there? No, it's a very natural thing. But this film obviously takes that to a much higher level, where he's actually watching them with binoculars and telephoto lenses and stuff like that. But I think the reason this film was so successful at the time, and I think outside of its obviously technical brilliance, is also it really taps into something in the human psyche, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
About enjoying someone else's secret and they don't know it, I guess. It's a bit hard to put my finger on it. I'm not a psychologist, but yeah, there's something there that I think Hitchcock was very clever in tapping into.
At the end of the film, we finally break that stuck inside his room. He's been in there for almost 8 weeks now, and that tension is just palpable. Is that when he is being attacked, that the only way out is through his window, and then finally that tension is broken, where all of a sudden you're getting these different camera angles.
Yeah, and it's quick. Like it's really
very quick. There's some very odd editing in that scene.
I would have said it was disjointed, but I think it's disjointed to build that suspense.
At that point, you sort of like that huge tension and pimples being popped. And
it's one of those films I can finish it and then watch it immediately again afterwards. This phrase has never been more fitting for a film, but it's a very rich canvas of things. Yeah. I mean, we mentioned Where's Wally before. It's very much like that. There's so much you can look at.
I mean, it finishes where it began, with him in a wheelchair, and now with 2 broken legs.
Brilliant ending. Fantastic. But I think he's happier with it. I think he's
got the girl.
Yeah, he's got the girl. Yeah. It's a very cute little ending, actually.
It is.
Yeah. We implore you to go and watch Rear Window. I don't know if it's streaming anywhere, but you might have to buy a physical copy. Actually, I think it's on YouTube.
Yeah, you can rent it on there.
Part of me wants to encourage you to buy a physical copy. Don't let the DVD die. It's a wonderful format.
Yeah, I was able to watch like hours worth of extras today on the DVD. A wonderful tangible disc of shiny brightness.
I think there's a lot to be said for it, because that's the thing. Like, I learned a lot of that sort of little facts from the documentaries about the making of. I love that kind of. You learn stuff, and I like that.
Yeah.
it seems almost silly to rate this film.
It does, actually.
But
Because I already know what I think, what we're all going to give it.
but as a matter of discourse and regular practice as part of this show, we must give it something out of 5.
Absolutely sucked.
I can't. Who's this Hitchcock guy? He won't go anywhere. He won't take off.
What should our rating system
I feel
be?
like we should do. Should we just
Periscopes, because
that's better than what I was going to say. Yeah, let's do that.
Periscopes.
yeah.
You really shouted into that.
That actually frightened me a little bit.
I got excited. I was like, oh, islands, sea, periscopes. Damn it, here we go.
Okay, out of 5 periscopes, I'll go first. I'm just going to give it 5 out of 5. There's nothing...
Okay, so that's 15 out of 15.
Is that the general consensus how we feel about the film?
I think so. Yeah.
Would you like to add anything more to that conversation?
I think the only thing I would like to say is when I first, other than Psycho, which I watched at school, I had to introduce myself to Hitchcock's works with the help of my parents, kind of going, "Oh, you should watch this film. You should watch this film." This film and Rope. I can't believe that I haven't seen this film before. This film really just sort of changed my perspective on what I guess films made in the olden days could be. Because I think the oldest film I'd seen would maybe not Sound of Music, Singing in the Rain. That kind of method, that kind of school of filmmaking from back then. And I was like, wait, you mean they were making films like this back then? This is amazing. So I think it changed my perspective and made me appreciate older films much more than I used to.
You shouldn't be afraid to discover these.
Yeah, and I'm glad I did
films.
because it opened up a whole new world of these amazing films. Not all by Hitchcock that I wouldn't have seen otherwise. I reckon
because you have the expectations. You watch The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, exactly.
You watch The Sound of Music. And you should really have a go. At Hitchcock films as well because they really are something to watch.
They hold up. I think a lot of them hold up.
If you haven't seen them before, I think you will discover things that have been copied so many times now that were really born out of this time.
He's a trendsetter.
Like Alex, you recommended we watch the Simpsons ripoff of this movie, which in itself is just amazing as well. Purple drapes. I love purple drapes.
Where Bart breaks his leg and he can't be in the swimming pool.
I have not seen the Simpsons version of this, so I'm just going to sit here quietly.
Plenty of time on this island to...
I'll have to fire up Disney Plus and get on The Simpsons.
Mm-hmm.
Please do. I reckon it's been very valuable talking about this film, and so glad that the Time Tug was able to take us back there.
Well, I'm going to give it 5 periscopes out of 5 periscopes.
It's a 5 from me as well.
I think it's.
I didn't think that was obvious enough, but
you're happy with 5
for all the reasons we've discussed in the last half hour.
I think that works quite well.
Wonderful. Excellent.
See, we're all kind of speechless about it, aren't we? So we're just like,
I've got nothing bad to say about it. It's a great movie.
That's right. Well, that's 15 out of 15 periscopes for Alfred Hitchcock's, what was it? Rear Window. Sorry.
Well done.
You can visit us on trailerisland.com.au to listen to all of our previous episodes, including this one, and of course on anywhere you get your podcasts. You can Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, whatever you want.
The YouTubes. We're on the YouTubes.
Yeah, there's YouTube as well. There's a Twitter. Yeah. You can't listen to it on Twitter.
We're still trying to set up Australia Post. Don't worry about that.
We will get to that.
Yeah.
And so we thank you for your time. And don't forget, you can also give us a rating on Facebook, but also give us a rating on Podchaser. If you set yourself up on Podchaser and give us a review, that would be very helpful. I've been your host, Alex. I've been joined by
Matthew,
Steve,
and we will catch you next time on the Trailer Island Podcast.
Yeah.
This is a Narrative Network podcast.